caved, got myself a TV. I don't mean caved in a negative way, obviously having a TV isn't a bad thing, but since moving I've been extremely stubborn and told myself, I don't want a TV, I don't need a TV, I'm not going to get a TV. But over the last month, I've found myself increasingly thinking, it would be nice to have a TV, especially when I'm sat watching RuPaul's Drag Race. I'm thinking, this would be so much better on the big screen. And actually with anything I watch, I just think, this would be so much better on the big screen rather than my laptop just balanced on a coffee table or the sofa. So yes, I bought myself a TV. I used some vouchers that I had left over from Christmas. I feel like I've put them towards a good use. I have to admit, I picked this TV purely based on vanity. I didn't want to have to mount the TV to the wall because I have no idea if it will permanently be in this room. And B, I didn't want to buy a large TV stand. So I knew Samsung did that really nice, like 3-pronged, minimal looking TV stand. However, it's only compatible with, is it the Samsung Frame TV, which is really expensive, and the QLED range. So I think this was just under £600 in the end, which in comparison to other TVs, I think that's cheap. I'm going to spend this afternoon setting this up, and then this evening I can sit and watch Drag Race on a big TV, and I can't wait. I was just about to say the time is, and then realised I have no idea what time it is. All I know is that a lot of time has passed since this morning where you saw me getting excited about the TV. Sadly, the TV has not been properly assembled yet because I've spent 2 hours of my afternoon on a virtual chat support thing with Samsung because there was a part missing from the TV which is needed to fix the stand to the back of the TV, and unfortunately Samsung weren't hugely helpful, and it has actually worked out easier for me to just buy the missing part through a spare parts website rather than Samsung posting out the missing part. You know, it's not the end of the world, but still, I was just gutted when I started assembling the stand. I actually have assembled the stand, which so I can show you how lovely the TV stand is. There's just no TV attached to the other end, sadly. This is what it looks like. It's very nice, isn't it? And then the TV sits, sits there. Sorry, I should just turn the camera around really, shouldn't I? There we go, that's how the TV stand looks, and then the TV obviously sits there. But there's some bits that attach to here that are missing. So for the time being, I'm just leaving it. Just going to crank up the exposure because it's getting a bit dark in here. There we go. Okay, so as I was saying, this jumper is very similar to the Studio Nicholson one. As you can see, the colour is almost identical. This one's from Sunspel. Now this is actually a women's style. The Studio Nicholson one is a men's style, hence why that one is a lot more oversized. But yeah, the colour's almost identical. But like as a jumper style, they are almost identical. Then, as I established in last week's vlog, blue and grey go together quite well. So I've paired the jumper with some grey trousers. Now these are from LFM. They are extremely, extremely baggy. When I first got them, I was like, oh, I think they could be too baggy, and considered getting them tailored, like pulled in at the waist and sort of around the back of the bum, just to sort of slim them around the hips a little bit. However, upon reflection, and as I sort of think about summer and the prospect of warmer days, I'm thinking actually these trousers could look really good with a tight tank top or like a slinky cami and a belt and maybe some flip-flops or really minimal sandals. So I'm going to hold off getting them tailored until those warmer days arrive, because I think if I get them to, I mean, not that I can get anything tailored now anyway because they're all closed, but if I was to do that and then come summer, I think I might just regret it. So for now, I'm making them work as they are. They're just, they sit quite low on the waist, that's all. But I think the key is with things like this, like I've said this a million times, I'm 5'3" and I love oversized shapes, but because of my height, it's a real game of balance. So when something is this baggy on the bottom, I find it's best to keep whatever's on top as tight or as slim and as understated as possible, basically. That's why I think these trousers would look really good with a tight fitting, maybe like ribbed tank in the summer. Trainers are, I think these are called the Nike Daybreak. I will obviously look for links, but for some reason Daybreak comes to mind when I think about them. They are blue because I do like to match top and bottom. What else can I say about them? They're suede, and then this bit here is a light blue, sort of semi-opaque kind of mesh material. And just to compliment myself, I do feel very Phoebe Philo in this outfit. Right, I've talked about this outfit now for far too long, so I shall see you all in a bit. It is a full-on snow day today, not just the usual sprinkling or dusting of snow that we get here in England. This is ankle-deep kind of snow, which for us is a big deal. I know for lots of other people this isn't a big deal, but we never get snow like this. Out the back of my bedroom, I have a small sort of outside area and a parking space. And there's not a single footprint or mark on the snow. It is completely untouched, and I think I might have to go out there and stomp around in it just because it just looks so satisfying and I can't resist walking out there. It looks like a head. It just looks like a bust.
Stick together.
It sticks to my bloody gloves.
Oh, I had enough of this. Do you want to kick it over?
I've woken up quite early this morning, which makes a change. I'm not sleeping too great at the moment. I am up to my eyeballs in anxiety right now. I'd say this is day 3 of some very intense episodes of anxiety. I'd go as far as to say anxiety attacks. I'm not sure what's triggered it, and it's different from my sort of general day-to-day anxiety. This is extremely intense feelings of like suffocation, panic, just feeling very, very out of control and anxious, but extremely heightened anxiety. It's hard to explain. Normally in these circumstances I would take myself out for a very long run, but it's still very much snowing. And I think if I attempted to run in the snow, I would spend most of it flat on my face. Although, over the past couple of days, I have seen people out running. So I take my hat off to those people because I could never. I just think I would fall over continuously. So I thought, if I can't run, I'll walk. And I'm actually going to walk my running route, which is just under 11 kilometres. So I'm estimating at least 2 hours for this walk because I think there's going to be a lot of stopping and starting. So I'm going to make myself a tea in a travel mug and some snacks. And I've got my AirPods charged. I've got a podcast ready to go that's an hour and 45 minutes long that will keep my mind preoccupied. And I just hope this really sort of helps me just really calm down, because that's what I feel like I need to do right now, is I need to calm down. And I can't, when I get intense anxiety like this, it's not often, it's maybe, actually I haven't had anxiety this bad since the summer. when I get like this, my natural pattern is to then self-sabotage. So I'll get really, really, really anxious. I'll get in an absolute frenzy over something that's triggered it. Sometimes I don't know what's triggered it. And I will then self-sabotage. And I don't know why it's such a terrible pattern, because it just absolutely wrecks my day and puts me in the worst headspace. And I just thought, I can't do that to myself today. Oh, I'll show you what I'm wearing. I'm wearing my Arquette hat that I always wear, an Arquette hoodie, which, can you believe, I think is still available. So I will link that if I can find it. Wearing my Le 17 Septembre coat, so long and thick and heavy and just cozy. White jeans, because I always like to wear white jeans in an unsuitable circumstance. They're actually quite dirty, you can't see, but I wore them yesterday when I was out in the snow, and obviously they got dirty. And then my DM walking boots, that's DM as in D-I-E-M-M-E, not DM as in Dr. Martin. They're so big and heavy and chunky and just perfect for stomping around in the snow. Portion of this week's vlog. If you have no interest in running whatsoever, I recommend that you switch off now, because for the rest of the vlog I'm going to be answering questions in relation to running. If you are interested, maybe grab yourself a drink, because I have a total of 17 questions to answer. Apologies if the light goes in and out, it's a very cloudy day. I didn't quite anticipate the amount of questions that everyone left. I just didn't think people would be that interested, but I guess because I mention running in some capacity pretty much every week in every vlog, I guess people are becoming more and more interested in my running journey and why I love it so much. So yeah, thank you for all of your questions. I've tried to make sure that I've answered everyone's question within these 17. There were lots of similar questions that were just slightly worded differently. So yeah, I think I've kind of covered everything here. If I haven't answered your question, or if there's something else you'd like to know, please leave it in the comments and I can reply to you there. Something I just want to clarify actually before I start this. I am obviously by no means a professional runner or a professional athlete. I do not have any knowledge of sports science, physio, anything like that. So everything I say is my own experience and what has worked for me. It is just my opinion and my running journey. I think it was last week or a couple of weeks ago when I did the skincare haul, I got a few aggy comments from people saying that I shouldn't be giving out advice because I'm not a dermatologist and I need to do my research before I talk about beauty. So I just wanted to put a little disclaimer here that this is not the guide to running. This is just my experience, so kind of take it with that perspective. I guess it only makes sense to start with my running journey first of all and just talk to you a little bit about how I got to where I am today. So I've been running for 7.5 years, which feels like a very long time. I've been running for most of my 20s. I can still remember the exact day that I decided I was going to try running. I can just remember it all very, very vividly. Dean and I were living in Australia at the time, and I think what drove me to try it was I wanted a hobby. I wanted something for myself. Dean would go out skating quite often, and I wasn't bored, but I was a little bit at a loss what to do with myself sometimes. And I remember at the time I was doing this hideous YouTube workout. I think it was the Gillian Michaels 40-day shred or something. It was awful. I was not enjoying it at all. And I thought to myself, what can I do in this moment with the equipment that I've got and my surroundings? And running just was the obvious thing. So at the time we were living on a very long street that was quite secluded. There weren't many houses on the street. There was lots and lots of trees. So there wasn't many people, there wasn't lots of traffic. And I went out in, I think, just a regular t-shirt, just any old pair of shorts, and some New Balance 420s, which I'm not sure if they are meant for running. If they are, they're excruciatingly uncomfortable. And I think I ran maybe up and down the road 3 times. I don't think I was running for any longer than 4 or 5 minutes. And I did this every day for quite a while, until eventually I was running around the block. And I kind of stayed within a kilometre radius of our house for quite a while, running around the block several times. But I would never really run any longer than 12 to 15 minutes maybe. And I kept doing this until I just kind of got further and further and just built up more endurance, and it just became this thing that I really, really enjoyed. And 7.5 years later, I'm still loving it and I'm still running. Just to give you a little bit of history, I have completed 2 half marathons, and I've also completed many 10-kilometre races, which I have the medals to show for. That's the great thing about racing, is that you get a medal at the end. It's very satisfying. And just as for where I am today, I'm definitely not at my kind of peak. Since the pandemic, I have definitely slowed down, and I have lost a lot of strength and lost a lot of endurance and stamina. I run probably 2 to 3 times a week at the moment, and I run 8 to 10 kilometres each time. And I think what started as something just to do because I wanted a hobby has now turned into a huge lifeline. Running for me acts as a miracle cure basically for all the mental health issues that I experience, the anxiety, the low self-esteem. It's great for stress. It has become such a big part of my life, and I feel like I just couldn't do without running anymore. It has been obviously a physical journey, but it has been such a mental and a spiritual thing for me. It does so much for my mind, and I feel like without running, I just don't have clarity in life. So that's kind of a little summary of my running journey. So I'm going to start with the questions. The most common question was, how can I get into running? So the first thing that I'm going to say in regards to this question is, you have to want to run. You can't just be told to run. And I think that's where lots of people go wrong with running. This isn't like a blanket statement. I don't think. There are some people who don't want to do it and they try it and then they really enjoy it. But I think you do have to be slightly inquisitive about running and want to do it for, I guess, a reason. So many friends I know who have tried running just because someone's been like, oh, running's great. And they've not wanted to do it. They've just thought, I should try and do it. They've not enjoyed it. So your kind of headspace and your attitude towards running is quite important in the beginning. I also think with running, before you even start, it's very easy to get kind of overwhelmed with the running culture, and you get sort of overwhelmed about, well, what's my pace going to be like? Am I going to run far enough? Am I going to run fast enough? Do I have the right equipment? Do I have the right clothes, the right shoes? And in the beginning, those are things that you just shouldn't care about. You should just focus on just getting out there and giving it a go. Make yourself a really good playlist of all your favourite songs, or songs that are really upbeat that make you feel good. Or maybe queue up a couple of podcasts that you know make you laugh or make you feel good. And just listen to those and get out there and do it. Don't focus on anything else. Just focus on putting one foot in front of the other, and just trying to enjoy it. And I feel like then you can start to, if running's for you, then you can start to think about pace and distance and all those kinds of things. Another thing that I think is very good for getting into running, which I personally haven't used, but I've heard lots of good things about, are the Couch to 5K apps. I think in the summer there was, I can't remember if it was the NHS or someone was doing a free Couch to 5K app. I remember during that first lockdown, lots of people were using a free one. Don't quote me on that though, it might not have been the NHS. and loads of people rave about them. So I think if you've got maybe like that 5k goal, it's really good. I know they use a very sort of straightforward system of you start off by doing mostly walking and a little bit of running, and then you kind of reduce your walking over time and increase your running to the point where you're running 5 kilometers. But if it is just general running that you want to try and you're not that conscious of working on a goal, just get out there and give it a go. But if you're someone that works better with structure, maybe try an app. How can I make the jump from 5k to 10k? Can you talk about increasing your distance, how to build endurance, and have you always enjoyed running? Okay, so making the jump from one number to another can always feel quite daunting because I think we've kind of focused on that end number. And my advice for this is, well, first of all, you could just Google a plan. If you wanted something quite straightforward, you could Google how to get from 5k to 10k plan or how to get to 10k plan. And someone on the internet will have put together a plan. The way in which I would do it is I'd wait until I'd got to the point where I was quite comfortable with 5 kilometers, and then I would think, right, I'm going to try and run 6 kilometers. Then I'd wait until I got comfortable with 6, and then I'd try 7, and so on and so forth until you eventually get to 10. This time last year, I was training for the Copenhagen Marathon, full marathon. And I remember when I signed up, I was thinking I couldn't wrap my head around that I was going to have to run 26.2 miles? I should know this really. But that number in my head was like, how? I couldn't get my head around how. It just seemed like this huge unattainable number. So I just said to myself, do you know what? Forget about that number. Let's think about the bits in between and how we can cut that down into really manageable chunks that work on the long-term goal of 26.2 miles or however many it is. And I would just go running and I'd add on a couple more kilometers each time. And eventually I was running about 30 kilometers. This was before I just kind of gave up when the pandemic hit. I was running about 30 kilometers 2 to 3 times a week. And I got there. It felt like I got there really easily. I couldn't believe it. And I realized it was just because the chunks felt so much more manageable and more achievable on just like an easier time scale. So that would be my advice from trying to jump from one distance to another. And I think also this method helps you build up your endurance because you're pushing yourself, but only when you're comfortable, when your body's at that stage where it's like, okay, yeah, I'm ready to run a bit further. The breathing's correct, the posture's, like your body is ready for it. It's when you push yourself, because I've pushed myself to run distances that I shouldn't be running, and I've just felt knackered and awful afterwards. So that really helps build up your endurance. And in answer to have I always enjoyed running? Yes, I have, like always, even in the worst of times when I just feel awful and like I'm running in the rain or I'm in absolute agony or it feels like such an effort. I do really enjoy it because at the end of it, it always just feels so worth it. It's hard to explain, but yes, the short answer is that I have always enjoyed running. How do I prepare for a run? I am a morning runner. 70% of my runs are in the morning and they are fasted runs, so that means I run on an empty stomach. I find that this is the best method for me because in the morning I feel that is when I have the most energy and that's when I have the most successful runs. So in preparation for this, I always make sure I have a meal the night before that has a sufficient amount of carbs in it that sustain my energy the next day. If you're running really long distances, you're probably familiar with the term carb loading. I wouldn't necessarily say I'm carb loading because I'm not running those long distances. I was when I was training for a marathon. I was eating so much. So I just make sure that the meal the night before has had a really good balance of like carbs, protein, all the good stuff so that it can sustain my run the next morning. Literally, I wake up, I wash my face, I have a little bit of water, I put my clothes on and I get out there and I do it because I'm quite a procrastinator and it's not that I don't want to run, it's that I can get easily distracted by other things. So for me, it's just, that's the best method, I do run in the afternoon and the evening sometimes, but it has to be quite long after I've eaten. I just feel like I just don't have the energy. It kind of depends what I've been doing all day as well. If I've been sat around all day, I can run in the afternoon and the evening. But if I've been on my feet all day, I'm just like, no, I can't run. I don't have the energy. So first thing in the morning is the best time for me, and I don't do any stretching because again, it just doesn't work for me. There is some debate as to whether stretching is beneficial because there is such a thing as overstretching and damaging your muscles, but I just don't find stretching helps me in any way. It's more about the cool down for me. I have to make sure that I really cool down properly. A lot of the time that will be with just like simple stretches. Foam roller is brilliant, and a bath with lots of Epsom salts and just all that good, like a nice muscle soak and all that good stuff. Something also, this is kind of to do with post-run, not really the preparation for running, is when you're running in the morning, it's really important to make sure that you refuel the energy that you've used in the morning. So it's very easy to go out in the morning and continue your usual meal pattern, but you have to remember that you've just been for a run. So it is important to, I guess, eat a bit more. Since running, if I'm running regularly, I am so hungry, like all the time. And it's really important that you make sure that you are feeding that hunger basically, because you're using so much more energy when you're running. There have been times where I've been for a long run in the morning and then I've just had my normal sort of like lunch and dinner and I felt awful by the end of the day. So just always make sure as well you are keeping yourself hydrated. That's a good thing actually for preparing for a run, is make sure that you've kept yourself hydrated the day before. And if you're running regularly, just keep yourself consistently hydrated. Can you give advice for someone struggling to stay motivated? Okay, I've got a lot to say about this because motivation is a difficult thing to sustain when running. It is very, very difficult, and no matter how much you love running, everyone has difficulty with the motivational side of running. So the first thing I do if I am really lacking the motivation to get out there and go is I think about the person who's waiting for me the other side of the run. Now this sounds really weird, but I think of the me that is getting back from the run and feeling really good and thankful that they got out there and did it. I try and remember how good I feel after a run, and that motivates me quite a bit. Failing that, switching up your playlist is always a good thing to try. If I start to get too familiar with my playlist and songs start to feel a bit too repetitive, I'll get bored, because I think with running, one of the biggest goals is to not get bored. So you want to switch up your playlist. That's definitely one to keep you motivated. Something else that I wouldn't recommend doing very regularly, and I don't do that often, buying yourself a new piece of running clothing or equipment. Whenever I've got new leggings or a new top or a new piece of equipment, I get really excited to go running. But that's obviously not a very good thing to do continuously to sustain your running motivation. Another thing to try is changing up your route. I've got 3 routes that I kind of alternate between, because again, like if I'm too familiar with the route, it's like my mind is waiting for, oh yeah, there's that lamppost, yeah, there's that bit of the lake, yeah. And it just becomes far too familiar. So I have to switch up my route. And I live in a fairly small city, and for the most part, I know most areas, but there are still some areas that I don't know my way around. And sometimes I'll be out running and I just think, oh, I'm gonna go down there. Don't know what's down there, but I'm just gonna see. And sometimes it might just lead to like an area that you're not that interested in running in. Sometimes it can lead to like a whole new area and you're like, wow, might find a new running trail or like a walking path or something. So just switch it up a bit. Watching running as well can be quite motivating. So I quite enjoy going on YouTube and watching Mo Farah. Obviously I am not quite at his level just yet, but he's really motivational to watch and also listen to when he talks about running. And the same goes for reading about running. That can be quite motivational. I don't read any running magazines as such, but there's lots of good running websites where you can just read general articles about running. I use the Strava app, which is great for that kind of feeling of community, I guess. That's also quite motivational when you're scrolling through looking at other people's runs and you'll see a mate who's had a really good run and you're like, oh, I'm going to go out and have a good run actually. So that's also very good. And the other thing I think is quite motivational, I've not personally tried it, but a running club could be quite good, because I'm a solo runner and I don't mind running solo, but I do understand the appeal of running with a group of people and how good that can be for your running motivation. A very observant follower remembered that I had an injury last summer and just asked if I could talk about that, persevering through injury and when to take breaks. So yeah, last summer I really hurt my knee, and I'm still not 100% sure what I did, but when you're running, absolutely everything in the body is connected. And if one thing is slightly off, then it can really impact other areas of the body. So I think what happened was, as I rolled my ankle, but didn't quite realise how much damage I'd maybe done when rolling my ankle, so continued to run on it. And without realising, I think I over or undercompensated somewhere else in my body, which then damaged my knee. And then my ankle healed, but my knee got worse and worse and worse. And it got to the point where anytime, like I tried to persevere through it, and anytime my foot hit the ground, it just felt like my knee was going to completely buckle underneath me. It just felt like it couldn't hold my weight. And I think when it comes to knowing when to take breaks, is you have to judge when an injury is going to completely ruin your running in the long term versus the short term. And I had to say to myself, do I want to be able to run again? Or do I just completely want to screw up my knee and not be able to run again? And obviously the answer is I do want to continue running. But it is hard to take breaks. It's really difficult because you feel like you're admitting defeat, or you feel like a failure, like you're giving up. But it takes a very strong person to admit, do you know what, I've injured myself and I have to take some time out. Usually, pre-pandemic, if I have an injury, I will then go swimming because it's low impact, it's still very good for your entire body. But obviously, in this instance, I couldn't do that, so it was just a lot of sat at home and waiting for it to heal. There are times where some injuries can be kind of like worked through, and you can use what are they called? Knees, like supports on your legs or on your ankles, or that tape that you can put on your muscles. But there is some conversation around how beneficial they really are, and whether they are just sort of masking pain, or whether they're just kind of like a short-term fix. So yeah, it's just judging when the time is to take the break, and just sort of saying to yourself, well, in the long run, this is more beneficial than just trying to persevere through an injury. Because I think just even the sentence persevering through an injury is quite problematic, and it's not something you should do, even though I've tried to do it many times. Okay, this segues nicely onto the next question actually. Are you worried about your joints or your knees when running? Well, I wasn't until I had my knee injury. I'm not very much a live in the moment kind of person, but when it comes to running, I am. And I'm like, if it's serving me now, I'm going to keep running. But I must admit, I do think about it from time to time. And the way in which I justify it is, Murakami is 72 years old now. I'm not sure what kind of state he's in or if he's still running, but he ran a marathon every day for over 20 years and ran every day for over 20 years. So, no, but seriously, the way in which I kind of justify it and not worry about it too much is running is the only cardio that I do aside from walking. I don't do HIIT, I don't do any classes at the gym, I don't do anything else. So in between running, I do swimming. And I do this because it's great for your entire body, but it's very low impact. It's very low impact on those joints. So I kind of use swimming as like a healing tool in between running. And I've convinced myself that by only using running as the most intense thing on my knees and my feet, it's not actually that bad. But I could just be sticking my head in the sand, who knows, but it is something I'm kind of like thinking about more and more. And when I can go back to the gym, like this, I was doing this pre-pandemic. A lot of my strength training, I would work on exercises that would strengthen the muscles around my knees so that it would reduce the likelihood of injury. But yeah, unfortunately, it's kind of one of those things that is inevitable with running, which I feel very sad to say. Which leads on to, do I do strength training quite nicely? Yes, pre-pandemic, I did a lot of strength training. As much as running is a mental and spiritual journey for me, it is a physical journey. You know, I do want to get stronger, I want to get faster, I want to be able to run longer distances, and the only way in which I can do that is by strength training. I predominantly work on my core because for me, the core is so important for your posture. And if your posture is good, then the rest of your running form is generally quite good, and you're less likely to sustain an injury. As soon as my core weakens, which it is a little bit weak at the moment, well actually no, it's very weak, I slouch, I feel like running is more difficult, it just feels so much harder, and I'm more likely to roll my ankles and tweak my legs. Whereas when I'm all upright, I'm like a gazelle running through the forest, I feel brilliant. And then I will also work on sort of like the muscles from like the knee up. I don't know muscle names, but I want to say glutes, quads, hamstrings, that kind of area, just so that again, everything's all linked, and it's all about like making sure those muscles are sort of like strong enough to carry you and hold you up. So yeah, strength training is very, very important personally for my running journey. Received 2 comments that I thought were quite kind of linked. Someone said that they have a fear of falling over and that's stopping them from going running. And then someone just spoke about afraid of running in the dark. I have to admit, I've never had a fear of falling over, and I've never fallen over whilst running. Touch wood, I won't ever fall over. Unless your balance is really terrible, you won't fall over. Honestly, you'll be fine. Unless you trip over something or it's really slippery, you'll be fine. You'll be surprised at how stable you are on your feet. And once you get into a rhythm, honestly, you'll be fine. In terms of afraid of running in the dark, I'm just very cautious about it. Unfortunately, running in the dark is inevitable when during the winter, like either I'm running in the morning and it's dark, or I'm running in the evening when it's dark. The only way I can kind of get around this is by running in areas that are very well lit. I'll run around the city and make sure I'm in the areas where there's lots of shops and street lamps, so it's all well lit, or I'll be in a residential area with lots of street lights, but I will avoid anywhere that's not well lit. You know, I'm not going to go running around the lake at night or through the forest or anything like that. And it's really hard because I obviously have the luxury of picking and choosing when I want to go for a run. So in the evening, I'll try and run between 5 and 7 because people are still around in those times. People are coming out of their workplace, so I don't feel too afraid. But sort of anywhere after sort of like 7 or 8, when it starts to feel a lot emptier around the city, I don't like it. It's a bit creepy. I also don't like running in the dark because it makes me feel quite claustrophobic. I don't know if that's a thing, but I think it's just not being able to see properly. I don't particularly enjoy it. But I know, you know, if you work a 9-to-5 job, running in the evening is like your only option. So I'd say look into maybe a running club because, you know, safety in numbers. Equip yourself with the things that make you feel safe. If that is an alarm, you know, lights, a high-vis vest, let a friend, you know, your housemate or your partner know that you're going running. And also, again, you can do this like a housemate or a partner or anyone. Sync up your Find My Friends. I don't know, I think this is an iPhone thing. And they can then track where you're running. But yeah, unfortunately, finding the daylight hours to run during the winter just feels impossible. Where do I run? How did I initially feel confident enough to run in public, and how do I continue? So I basically run as far away from civilization as possible. I avoid roads, any high traffic areas, any areas with lots of people. I mainly do this because men have a tendency to beep their car horns at women whilst running, and I just find it so infuriating. I can't stand it. It just makes me so angry. And I don't particularly like the sort of like dodging of people whilst I'm running. So I tend to run in nature as much as possible. It will be around a lake, through a forest, along a walking path that's big enough to run on. I like to run in much more secluded areas. In terms of how to feel confident running in public, I think maybe ask yourself, if you're struggling with this, is it because you're worried about running on your own, or is it because you're worried about running and getting judgment from people? If it's the judgment thing, literally no one cares. And this is something I've learned over the years. No one cares about you. No one's looking at you. No one's thinking about you. Literally, no one's noticing you. And if they are, and you think they're judging you, then that's on them. Like, the way I overcome stuff like that, because I do get it, like going out running into the open world is really daunting, because if you're used to being in a gym environment or somewhere like that, you're all there for the same reason. But when you're out running, it is difficult. And if someone beeps their horn at me, or someone makes a comment, or I think someone's being a bit judgmental, I just think to myself, and this is really big-headed, but it boosts my confidence. I think, I'm out here doing this really cool, tough thing, and I'm improving myself. What are you doing? You're sat judging me, you're sat beeping your horn at me. And that makes me feel quite good about myself. But that's not to say that the person judging or beeping their horn at me doesn't have good things going on in their life. But in that moment, that is what makes me feel more confident. If you're struggling with the confidence because it's about being on your own, honestly, running on your own is so liberating. If you're struggling with it, maybe try and find a running buddy or join a running club. But I find it so liberating. I can switch off from absolutely everything. I can completely just like zone out, just ignore everything around me and just focus on either the run or focus on just like some great thoughts. I cannot stress enough how liberating I find running on my own is, and just don't worry about what other people are doing around you, what other people are going to think. And if that is a struggle, then find those secluded areas. Find areas where there aren't many people, or find areas where there are lots of people running. That's always really helpful if you are in an area where you know there's loads of other people running, because there's this real sense of like camaraderie when you pass other runners and there are other people running in the area. What benefits do you see from running? So the biggest benefit for me is what it does massively for my mental well-being. It feels like a miracle cure. I think I said this at the beginning. It is my lifeline when it comes to overcoming anxiety, low self-esteem, low confidence, just the whole spectrum of mental well-being feels like it is fixed, so to speak, when I am running. It obviously has its physical benefits. I can't deny those. It's good to stay in shape, you know, it's good for fat loss, it makes me feel stronger, but it's so much more than a physical benefit for me. It is how it makes me feel inside my body and how it makes me feel as a person. I feel like a better person when I'm running regularly. I feel happier, I feel like I hold myself better, I feel like I exert myself better, I feel like I speak better, I feel like I look better in my skin, I feel like I sleep better. Just everything just feels so much better. It's very hard to explain. And that for me is the biggest benefit, and why running has become this huge part of my life. How do I manage running up hills? Good question. I don't. I just avoid them like the plague. Sorry, that's such a rubbish answer, but I can't stand running up hills. Yes, my runs have some inclines, but hills, no, I just avoid them. Which apps do you use, and have you considered a running watch? Yeah, over the past couple of months I have considered a running watch. I'm just kind of figuring out, like, do they still let you listen to music? Or do you have to carry your phone around with the running watch? If I can just listen to my music and just wear the watch and leave my phone at home, yeah, 100%, I definitely want a running watch. As for apps, it is Strava all the way for me. I used to be quite a Nike Run Club app person, but I like the sense of community on Strava, and I realised that all my friends were on Strava and no one was on the Nike Run Club app. So I switch over to the Nike one when I want to do a headspace run or a guided run or something a bit more meditative, but for the most part it is Strava. Do you have any favourite activewear? Sorry, no. I wish I was one of those people that was really into the clothes that they wear when they're running and going to the gym and that, but I've just not, I care about my shoes and that's about it. I've been wearing the same clothes now for a very long time. I alternate between, I think, a pair of leggings, a pair of shorts and a couple of tops, which I know is quite gross. I've heard Lululemon is quite good, but yeah, I'm sorry, I can't help you. I kind of go to the Nike outlet here each season and just do a little top up of basic things. But apart from that, no, I do not have any favourite activewear. Can you talk about gait analysis? Okay, I'll try and talk about this as quickly as possible. So I went for a gait analysis before my first half marathon because I thought to myself, right, I'm running a long distance. I want to just make sure I'm wearing the correct trainers for my running style. And gait analysis is used to analyse your pronation, and pronation is the way your foot naturally sits slightly more on the inside as opposed to the outside. And it will, the analysis will show you if you overpronate or if you supinate. So overpronate is leaning too much on the inside of your foot and supinate is leaning too much on the outside of your foot. So they get you on a treadmill and you have to run on the treadmill and they video it and they slow it all down and analyse it all for you. It's really, really interesting. There is some debate over how beneficial it is and whether you actually need to do it. Lots of people think that running shops and sports shops only do gait analysis in order for you to kind of tempt you or make you spend more on your trainers, which could be true. But at the time I was spending about £50 on my just any old Nike pair of trainers I could buy from the outlet. And then when I had my gait analysis, he was like, here's a pair of £164 Asics trainers that will be perfect for you. And I was just like, are you kidding? But I have to say, they changed running for me, made it so much more comfortable for me. So I personally found gait analysis really interesting. I learned that I overpronate, so all my running shoes need a kind of support on the heel to straighten it and some support around the ankle. I think if you're struggling with shoes, definitely give gait analysis a go, and I would say it has improved my running since switching to trainers that are more suited to my pronation. What do you do when you have a bad run? Okay, so annoying answer, but I embrace it. And the reason I embrace it is because I've learned over time that I have to accept that all runs are not the same. Not every single run is going to be good, and it's hard not to do this, but you shouldn't really kind of judge a run against another run. And I also have to kind of look at what I deem as a bad run versus a good run. And if I have a bad run, I try and learn from it. And I think, right, what can this bad run teach me? What can I learn from this and take into my future runs? And ask myself, why was it a bad run? And through doing this process, I've learned that I can't run on the day before or the first day of my period. It's an absolute no-go. I don't perform well if I haven't slept properly. I don't perform well if I'm not hydrated enough. What else? There are a couple of other things. I can't remember now off the top of my head. But it's those little things that you start to realise through those bad runs and you're like, oh, okay. So that's why I had a bad run. Oh, because I ate a curry the night before. So it's just trying to learn from it. And for me, no matter how bad a run feels, I don't regret it. I never regret a run, no matter how rubbish it felt. It still feels good to get out there and move. And my final question, I need to really wrap it up now because I've been talking for almost 40 minutes. What do you listen to and can you share your playlist? The reason my running playlist on Spotify is private is because I'm not quite ready to expose myself as the true emo that I really am. My playlist has a lot of Linkin Park on there. There's some Panic at the Disco, there's some Paramore, but then there's also some real like top 40 sort of dance music. And for me, what I listen to is so much about the pace. It's not really about finding music that I listen to in my day-to-day life. It is about finding the music that is the correct tempo for me and has the right feel to it. So if you go on Spotify, they have running playlists that are split into beats per minute. So it's quite good to go on there and kind of get a gist for what the BPM is best suited for you, or what you feel is best BPM to run at. But for me, it does tend to be like quite fast-paced music, quite not metal, but yeah, like that kind of emo rock music. I'm very much stuck in a music period that started, let's say, 2006 and ended when NME ceased publication, pretty much. You know, I'm very much stuck in a sort of like indie emo phase, and that's the kind of music that I run to. So I won't be making that playlist public just yet because I am a little bit embarrassed by it, but that's the kind of genre of music that I run to. Okay, I'm going to call it a day there because this has been a lot longer than I hoped it would be. However, I do hope you enjoyed it, and that if you are a runner or you're aspiring to be a runner, you know, you're thinking about giving it a go, then I hope that some of this was of some help to you. I also just want to add, I'm really sorry that I didn't upload this vlog on Tuesday. I am really undecided about which day I like to upload my vlogs on. And I think I'm going to go back to Sunday because Sunday feels like a nice day to do it, because within this time zone, people can watch it on a Sunday evening. If you're slightly forward in time, maybe you can start your week, you know, on a Monday with a vlog. And if you're slightly further back in time, you can start your Sunday morning with a vlog. It just feels like a slightly more wholesome day to upload on. I hope you enjoyed this vlog, and I shall see you all next week.